Mega Man Classic, the original series and the one with the most entries, as you might expect. Going along with that are the numerous bosses that appear throughout, most notably the Robot Masters. These androids, typically appearing in sets of 8 that you can take on in any order you wish, along with their weapons, make this series what it is. So hey, for fun, and because the Maverick video didn't do half bad, why not go over my favorite from each game? I'm Wes, the Explosion, and here's my list of top Robot Masters, with perhaps a few bonus picks. Alright, for one, Ruby Spears plays a big part in making my choice Cutman. While I'm not sure why they chose him as one of the 3 bad guys to show up with Wily every episode, his constant presence really tied him into what the series was for me, and I liked seeing him every time I could rush into the house after school to try to catch the last 5 minutes of the show. I also liked the pairing of his Igor impression and cheesy quips. "I'm going to make paper dolls out of you, Mega Man." Even in the games proper though, I still like him a lot. I enjoy other series like Zelda and Dragon Quest, so boomerang weapons tend to rank high for me. Plus, just how long the rolling cutter stays out and how much ground it covers is really helpful. In the arcade games, with its vocal work, he comes across as a silly little guy, which is endearing. In Powered Up, for everyone who remembers that one, they gave him some extra jumping power, which is amazing in platformers. And can we just appreciate his design? Functionally, he's more or less supposed to be a lumberjack, but rather than giving him the obvious axe, instead he gets a pair of shears that he wears on his head like a bow and just hucks around. It's a creative choice, and hey, he's also DLN3, meaning after creating his assistant in Kids, Rock and Roll, this is where Light's head went immediately after. It's kinda funny. While early impressions did make Cutman my original favorite, he still remains either my first or second choice for Best Robot Master. And as an honorable mention, there's Time Man from Powered Up. He's purple, his time slow is pretty handy, his regular attack ain't bad, and he has metal boobies on his head. I also like his somewhat haughty attitude and how he carries himself. While I'd still put Cutman over him, it is pretty close and he's kind of from a different game, so he gets a name drop. Have I mentioned that I love Tatsunoko? Either them or Trigger are my favorite animation studio, and Capcom has taken a lot of inspiration from them. Especially one anime in particular. M. Bison is Breaking Boss, Rush is inspired by Friender, and heck, the Wolves and Woodman stage even share that character's name. Having Quickman be a reddish recolor of Keshan himself makes him an easy lock for my top pick for Mega Man 2. Frickin' love that guy. Could do a whole video comparing him and Mega Man after a rewatch and learning how to navigate copyright. But let's not just regulate Quickman to a knockoff. He's more than that. In the game, he once again activates the boomerang bonus. But hey, those are just the sideshow. The real threat is his speed, as his name implies. I always hate collision damage, since why should I take damage when the enemy doesn't? But given that his main thing is hitting you fast, it actually makes sense with him. He's also the hardest of the Robot Masters in this game, in my opinion anyway, so going from needing his weakness and maybe still an E-Tank to actually somewhat keeping pace with him feels like a real accomplishment. In manga and comics, he tends to be portrayed as either confident or arrogant, but since he can actually back it up, I tend to like him more for it. He also ranks high not just for this game, but overall for me. Moving on to 3, it's Shadow Man, and he's the Robot Master that's a contender with Cutman for number 1 overall. What can I say? He's a ninja, I'm a recovering weeb, he's also pretty edgy, and a part of me, deep down, will never mature past 15. He has a cool backstory, Wily allegedly finding an alien robot and modifying it to suit his needs. His weapon, the Shadow Blade, is awesome, being a shuriken, having, for the 3rd time, a boomerang effect, and being able to fly in 8 directions, giving it a lot of the functionality of the Metal Blade without being quite as broken and making me feel like I'm cheating for using it. Plus, his design's awesome, beyond just the ninja thing. Taking a look at him from a distance, it'd be pretty easy to think that he's just wearing a cloth outfit, but looking at his design art, there's a lot more robotic touches added in, from the more traditional Robot Master boots, metallic armor, and an actual vent on his back. He's a perfect balance of rustic and sci-fi. And for 4, this comes down largely to my love of mythology and learning about different cultures. Pharaoh Man is a pharaoh in an Egyptian tomb with mummies whose attack is summoning a ball of energy that looks like a miniature sun. While it might be a stretch to say that that last bit is a reference to Ra, I like to think so. Speaking of that weapon, it's pretty darn good, and even when it doesn't work as intended with the charge, it still manages to be pretty effective, so I never feel like I wasted my shot. Plus, since it appears over your head, you don't need to actually throw it to use it. There's a few enemies that I like ramming the shot into rather than figuring out the right time to throw it. 4 has a lot of strong designs, but Pharaoh Man just ticks too many boxes for me to pick anyone else. I love his look, I love the cultural reference, I love his attack, I even love his dorky Saturday Night Fever pose. Why oh why do I choose Charge Man for 5? He has the most frustrating fight, outside of some of the Dark Men, in the game. And I'm not even really a train person. Sure, if you asked me to take a weekend trip and travel by train, I'd probably agree for the novelty of it, but I have no model engines, I do not know obscure factoids, I've only ever ridden the metro for a short jaunt while in a city. And yet, for some reason, I just love how they married the form of man with that of a train. It's not a Thomas the Tank Engine affair where they just slap a face on the front, this is a perfect balance between both android and locomotive. I honestly don't know which I'd say Charge Man is more like. Because of this, I absolutely adore this boss and have an odd fascination with him. His design is just so clever. I also like the charge kick. While the ranged move is typically better and is my preferred method of doing business, just physically striking an enemy can be so satisfying, especially by contrast. 6 might just be the hardest one for me to pick a favorite. The weapons trio are all really cool. I could sing the praises of each for a while, but my ultimate pick is Tomahawk Man. The Silver Tomahawk is one of the better weapons in the series, being able to strike pretty much anything that isn't physically below you as long as you can angle it right. It can take out a lot of irritatingly placed enemies for you. And in case you can't tell by my accent, or lack of if you live in a similar area, I am American, and this is our rep in the game. Naturally, that gives me a pretty big bias towards Tomahawk Man, but more than that is how they decided to represent us. I could have seen this easily have gone in a more jokey direction, like football, the one with the more oval-shaped ball, or hamburgers, which would have admittedly have been kinda funny, but no, we got a Native American and he kicks ass. Thank you to whoever made this call, I am eternally grateful. I like the Western theme going on for his level, his weapon is easily my favorite in the game, like I said, and from the sprite work we get, he comes across as stoic and cool. USA! 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 From 7, it's Springman. Yeah, his power sucks. Yes, he's easy to get into an exploitable pattern, but he hides out in a toy factory, which is whimsical as heck. There's diagrams of Mega Man on some of the screens in the level, making me wonder if they're trying to figure out a weakness or make action figures of him. He has 2 different spring enemies because just one simply wouldn't do. He's based around an object that no one should have ever considered offensively viable. He's a very silly boss. Plus, he has stretchy punches. Ever since Majin Buu, I have had a weird obsession with stretchy punches. Luffy, Arms, Springman, all the stretchy punches. And he's even one of the racers in Battle and Chase, so it seems like I'm not the only one with a soft spot for him. I really like Clown Man from 8 for much the same reasons. While he doesn't punch, he does get stretchy, even reaching into the ground to pop his hands out from under you. He has the whimsical toy factory angle, with his little playthings even being much more front and center. And the Thunderclaw letting you not just knock back attacks from Grenade Man, but also enabling you to swing about some areas like your Indiana Jones is also great fun. Plus, he's a clown, which is, again, silly. And while he is kind of cute with his small stature, color palette, and mannerisms, this is nicely contrasted with how creepy he can be. He's got grabby hands. Hitting him with his weakness tangles him up, and one of his death quotes is, "See you in my dreams." What the heck do you mean by that, Clown Man? I love the little guy. Would you consider Mega Man and Bass a bonus? Well, either way, it's Magic Man. I like his theme park at night stage with its somewhat sleepy track. It gives the impression of one last parade as you head home for the evening. His weapon, the magic card, is pretty handy, grabbing items for you. I also like how he's a robot, a marvel of technology, but allegedly uses magic for his attacks. Then again, maybe they're all illusions and his cards have a computer guidance system. No, don't ruin my dreams. More importantly though, those hips don't lie. Back to mainline, Galaxy Man takes 9. I love his design with his silly UFO head, antennae, and dark display screen eyes. his noodle arms, and his shiny metal body that pops back into his head like a transformer. His black hole bombs are really darn good, you barely have to aim, and its inclusion in his final smash works great, potentially letting you nail multiple people. The warp boxes in his stage that trampoline you in and out are one of my favorite stage gimmicks, and his music is super catchy, especially the mix they did for Rockmanholic. Gotta get away to Galaxy. For 10, it's Sheepman. His inclusion is a literary reference to the novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. It influenced at least the X series, so the games owe a good bit to it, and it's just overall a fantastic read. And before you say that I'm really reaching with that connection, his stage theme is named Cyber Sheep's Dream. His stage also has a really different feel than most of the others in the series, being computer themed and having stuff like mouse pointers, schematics flashing in the edges of the screen, and just an overall wider color range with some of the blocks. The boss himself is another silly little guy, being just kind of a poof ball with no discernible face and some limbs and antennae just kinda sticking out of him. He'd make a good plush. For his boss fight, he splits into 3 clouds which attack in the order they fly off in, Sheepman appearing from the last. It requires you to pay attention and makes for a fun encounter. Listen, I'm going to be very magnanimous here and not count their stage against them. I realized that I never did a proper recording of 11, so I figured I could run through a few levels real quick on casual to get some, and even on that setting, the bounce physics still made me miserable. But hey, at least I like Bounce Man. He's bouncy, he's stretchy, he's pink, he's silly, he's another whimsy pick, and I like throwing around bounce balls too. Just please don't make me navigate his area again. I don't have much experience with the bonus bosses, aka the Mega Man Killers, Quint, and Fake Man, but I wanted to include them. I actually just did the DLC for 10 last night, as well as Game Boy 2, but if I had to pick, Punk. First off, his stage was probably the least bullcrap of the 3. That's not fair, let's discuss boss proper. Okay, so he's called Punk and his design reflects the name, the best out of the killers. The mohawk, the spikes, the stance he takes, it all screams Punk. His boss fight is also the most learnable, so facing him is fun rather than frustrating, boring, or even frantic. And when it comes to his weapon, while they might not be the most accurate, it is still pretty fun to huck screw crushers out there. Coming in clutch, I just found a place where I could play Roman numeral 5 and managed to bang out a playthrough, just so I could pick a Stardroid. First impressions have me choosing Jupiter. He has an interesting design, with a beak-like helmet and raptor claws rather than the standard feet. His color palette, green and yellow, also looks really good on him, unlike when some other people wear it. He's got an interesting level, it being space theme and having reduced gravity outside, you jumping like normal again once you go back in, then having some slippery ice sections. Then combining the ice sections with the weird gravity. While none of these things are unheard of, having a few gimmicks that the stage swaps between and mixes and matches keeps you on your toes and makes for a fun experience. I also like the boss fight, him floating above you and you needing to wait for him to swoop down to hit him. Or using his weapon, the bubble bomb, which will fly up to strike him for you instead. I like it when the optimal weapon makes sense and gives you more of an edge besides just some extra ticks of health. Makes the fight seem well thought out. And we can't forget about fortress bosses. My favorite's the Yellow Devil. They're probably the most well-known of this category and has appeared in many different forms, including as a stage hazard in Super Smash Bros., so the series owes a lot to them for keeping it in the popular consciousness. To name my favorite instance though, it'd be the original from 1. Not only is it the most iconic, but it does an interesting, though likely unintentional, job of being both hard and easy. They do just as much damage to you as you do to them with the Thunder Beam, so you need to do a bit better than go blow for blow. You don't have the slide to maneuver with, his blobs follow a specific pattern and you can see them coming after the first round so you can predict them, but with their spacing, it's still really tricky. They can be a huge stumbling block for the uninitiated. Or they would be if not for the pause glitch. Send out a Thunder Beam, continually pause and unpause, and you can take them down in just one strike, no problem. It's really cool how the challenge is there if you want it, but if you're just not at that level yet, you can essentially skip the fight and not let it ruin your experience. Moving on to design, he's essentially a golem made of an unspecified liquid, being manipulated with a control core that's also its only weakness. While it's not the most complex in appearance, it's still memorable and cool, and it's obvious why the Devil series keep on coming back. My favorite Wily fight is from 3, specifically Gamma. While the big guy is a bit of a pushover, he's the most interesting visually. Not just another skull ship or capsule, but a giant robot, and needing to climb around on him, while limited, is cool. I wish there was a bit more to him, both in challenge and sections, though they were planning on making 3 a much bigger game, so maybe this was originally meant to be a much more complex fight. I will continue to long for what could have been. Beyond just that though, the 2 Wily machines before this are also kinda neat. While really easy, the first form looks pretty wild, having those 2 stalk eyes for whatever reason and its little dingle that just waves back and forth. The second form can be a little annoying, just pitching out attacks while occasionally teabagging to let you hit it with its weakness, the hard knuckle, and having some kinda tricky timing. But no, what I like about it is how you can forgo this for a more non-traditional weakness, using the rush jet to instead just stay on its level and continually plink away until it dies. I like how it rewards creative thinking. Or just watching a more seasoned player speedrun it. That's all 11, plus spin-offs and special guests. At least I hope so. There's some oddball stuff out there. We can probably just count Wily Wars in with the Mega Man killers, right? Anyway, those are all my favorites, along with some of my biases. With this, you could now hypothetically draw up my perfect Robot Master. But what about you? Which do you favor from each game, and are there any traits that maybe score some bonus points? As always, thanks for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you enjoy Mega Man content. For everlasting peace.